I've made this video to share some of the great ideas our clients have to enhance learning by creating and designing better learning spaces. When you step into a new classroom, sometimes you might feel like you've stepped back 50 years. Yes, there are nicer chairs and there are nicer tables and it's clean and fresh, but the students, they're still laid out in rows, they're still in front of house, with a writing board, clock at the front, and it feels things haven't really changed in 50 years. But we're fortunate over the last 10 years to have worked with some very forward-thinking, innovative institutions and schools in Victoria. And today I wanted in this video to explain and talk about one particular project we did with Monash University, one of their next generation learning spaces. But before that, I just wanted to introduce you to the idea of these innovative learning spaces. So on the left here, this is the Learning Lab at Melbourne University. It used to be a tiered lecture theatre. The lecture theatre was stripped out and this collaborative learning space developed over these tiered levels. And you'll see there's even an existing column left in there that's been integrated into the design. On the right hand side, this is one of the first takes of teaching in the round by Victoria University probably 8-9 years ago. The idea being that you could have a group of students or a lecturer or a teacher in the middle, students arranged around that, and then these breakout spaces in the corner, 4 of them, where there's a smart board where smaller groups could work, and then cameras could capture that information or information from the middle and display it on these screens so the rest of the class can see it. On the left here, this is a really innovative learning space by Monash University, a K-12 space. And these walls can pivot and slide, so it can be converted from a general classroom into an art room, into this immersive 3D space. And on the right hand side, this is Deakin University's development of general learning spaces, which can function as a general classroom, collaborative classroom, a science lab, so really multifunctional type space. As I said, the one I want to talk to you about is the Monash University One. And what's really interesting about these projects is what the existing spaces can feel really dull and uninspiring and uninviting, but how, in fact, there are often really great opportunities in these spaces to create really compelling, inviting learning spaces. So this is that same space demolished, and you can see all the lovely natural light that this floor actually can get. And then this is just a picture of the finished product, and I'll get into more detail on this particular project, but you can see just the idea of using natural light and transparency to create a really nice, inviting learning environments. So where we start with these projects is a really high level review of the floor plate. In this instance, we had an entire floor of an existing building, and we start looking at circulation, keeping in mind if you've got 3 classrooms of over 120 students, that means you've got 120 students in the classrooms and the same number potentially waiting outside. So you need to allow space for that to happen. And then also introducing these informal spaces, which is shown by the light blue color here, so that students waiting can have small group sessions together or do individual work, but also by creating really compelling spaces so that students not even coming to these classes might know about these spaces and come and do some of their work here. And we work through these through a series of high-level sketches with the intent to develop obviously a much more detailed floor plan. And this was the final floor plan for this particular project. And working from the right, a 90-seat teaching in the round, which has a central sort of learning spot in the middle with tables arrayed around that. And then in the middle, there's a 60-seat collaborative learning space, and to the far left, a 48-seat collaborative learning space. And you'll see here the opportunity to actually join these two together, so you end up with a 100-seat teaching space. And then a generous informal circulation space through the front. That's all flooded with natural light from the north, and then all the teaching spaces or learning spaces also have natural light from the south. And what's great about that is you don't get direct sun coming straight onto the screens, so there's no visibility issues with that. And here's some finished images, some images of the finished product, and I'll explain some of the great ideas here because I think it's really some intriguing. So this is the 90-seat teaching in the round, and you can see in the middle here there is this table that either a lecturer or an educator, a teacher or a group of students can work at. And then around this are an array of different tables. Now this table here, the idea being you might have a group of students working in here. There's a camera that can record what they're actually doing here, and that information can be shown on these screens. So any work being done here can be shared with this much larger class. And then these people working at this class have these screens at a lower level, so they can also see what information has been shared. And you'll see there these what they call MOOCs, which are essentially movable screens with video conferencing capabilities that can be moved around so that smaller groups of students can work in here. And the idea being that you can really share the information from any place to any place. So if there's something interesting or important being discussed here that wants to be shared with the wider class, that can be shown on these screens. If you've got a smaller group working here and there's something that's really intriguing or interesting to share with the wider class, whatever's been done here can then be also shown on the other screens to the rest of the class. And I think one of the really interesting ideas here is, and is quite open, is this idea that you can actually write on the table surfaces. If you think back to the days of scratching your name into the tabletop, timber tabletop, well, this is actually making use of surfaces. And Monash University are intent on making use of all surfaces to enhance learning. So vertical surfaces, horizontal surfaces, and using cameras to capture that and then share that information with the wider class. This is an image of the collaborative spaces. So on the left, I think it's a 48 seat, and on the right, it's a 60 seat. And this is the sliding door that allows them to join. But what's really interesting to see here is this idea of different types of seating spaces. So in a way, it's giving students an opportunity when they arrive at class to say, where do I feel like sitting today? Am I going to sit at the sofa, or do I want to go and sit at the back of the class? It gives them opportunities and choices of where to sit, and it also therefore encourages different groups of students for each class to create different groups with different people. And then the other important thing is to note is with these tables is this idea of there is a bit of a front of the house here, that this is lower seating, and then there's slightly higher seating in the middle, and then towards the back even taller seating, so everyone has good sight lines across the classroom. And you'll see their floor boxes arrayed in a grid through the floor, so this can all be reconfigured, and students, if they bring their laptops into class, can plug in and charge as well. And you'll see there's this array of MOOCs or portable screens of video conferencing that can be moved around the class. And these plug into a wall outlet, and there are multiple wall outlets around here so that these can be configured in a number of ways. And this is another image of that same classroom. It gives you an idea of the ability or the flexibility that comes from just the introduction of a simple but acoustic sliding door between the two classrooms that takes it from essentially a 40 and a 60 seat to a 100 seat. And this allows teaching with 2 or 3 lecturers and makes for a really flexible type teaching space. And I think what's really important to note with these spaces is the actual space that's allowed for them. So Monash University have a standard of about 2.7 square meters per student. And the reason for that is the idea of collaboration is not just to happen at each table, but so that students are encouraged to move from this group to another group. And for that, you actually need space for people or students to move around. And the same for the lecturer or the educator, to be able to freely move around rather than trying to squeeze past tables and chairs. And then finally, this image of the informal learning space. All the clients we work with, I think, understand the importance of that time between classes or after classes or first thing in the morning, of providing really compelling, nice spaces in which you can go and study or do some group work or catch up with friends or catch up and talk to a teacher for some help. And so in this project we created a range of spaces, but this particular one was designed as quite an intimate space for group work. What's really intriguing about these spaces, and what I want to talk about in coming videos, is what you see here, what works for Monash University, is done very differently by Melbourne University and Victoria University and Swinburne University. And in the coming videos, I'll show you some examples from some of our other clients that also take a very innovative approach to collaborative learning spaces, but do it in a quite different way. Thank you.